This floating mine is home to one of the most dangerous jobs in Indonesia. Every day, Joko Tingkir risks his life to harvest a precious source from below the ocean floor: tin.
Lebih baik saya bisa menyelam daripada mati kelaparan.
He breathes through this narrow tube, powered by a small diesel engine.
Kalau dalam oksigen, ya kalau mati mesin, oksigennya habis. Itu aja kita takut sih. Kita berdoa aja lah, mudah-mudahan kita minta selamat aja. Gitu aja.
This is the best paying job in his village. Indonesia is the world's biggest exporter of tin, but most of it has been mined on land here on the islands of Bangka and Belitung. But the tin deposits on land are almost gone, and the process of excavating it has left behind these huge toxic lakes filled with poisonous minerals and acids. Meanwhile, mining operations have moved offshore, and unlicensed miners scavenge the seafloor for whatever gets left behind. We followed Joko to see how he dives 65 feet underwater to collect tin, and to find out what makes this such a risky business. Joko was born and raised in Bangka.
Dulu sebelum pernah mengkima saya nelayan. Habis nelayan saya kerja nelayan, saya nggak pernah mengkimai untuk memuaskan. Saya berhenti dari nelayan, saya pernah mengkima.
About 40% of islanders here now work in the mining industry. And Joko knows it's the best way to feed his family. Pontoons form what looks like a small floating village. But each float has its own mobile crew. Today, the water is choppy and there are no life vests on board. All he has are these goggles and a basic snorkeling cap. Even just reaching the seabed is a challenge. Joko stays here for up to 4 hours a dive. His oxygen supply comes from an air compressor aboard the pontoon. Sometimes it can overheat and emit toxic gases into his air supply.
Pernah sih, pernah. Waktu mati mesin kan, tapi kita bisa tahan juga. Timbul pelan-pelan, secara pelan-pelan timbulnya kan. Kadang kita lipat selang jangan sampai habis.
Joko pulls this blue pipe along with him on the seafloor. First, he checks the sand for tin, but he has to be careful.
Ada siput-siputnya aku di spiral kan, kita buka.
Tin weighs more than sand, so Joko says he can tell there's tin mixed in based on how heavy this handful feels. He sends a sample up to the pontoon through this blue tube, so his crew can check for it too. When his colleagues see it, they send a signal down to Joko by bending his oxygen tube, momentarily cutting off his air supply. Once he knows he's found tin, his job is to keep holding the vacuum pipe firmly in that spot. Above, the filtration begins. His crew places these mats on the floor of the raft to separate the tin from the sand. Since tin is heavier, it falls through these pores. The sand gets dumped back into the ocean off the back of the pontoon. Next, workers peel the mats off and bring them to these basins, where they wash out the tin that's trapped inside the pores. Then they drain the water and scoop the ore into bowls. The whole process is loud, and it can be hard to keep tabs on Joko, who's still submerged about 60 feet beneath them. Meanwhile, sucking action from the pipe is creating a crater in the seafloor. The deeper the hole, the higher the walls of sand, and sometimes they crumble. Joko says they've even buried his friend.
Itu kejadiannya, karena terlalu asik nyelam, tidak tahu tanah tinggi, asik-asik kode di atas, makan, timpa lah. Kan air keruh tuh nyelamku, jadi tidak tahu lagi.
Joko worries for his life too. At the bottom of the sea, the pressure is more than 2 times what it is on the ground, and surfacing too fast has damaged Joko's hearing. Since safety is so expensive, sometimes accidents happen. Between 2017 and 2020, an Indonesian NGO recorded 40 deaths linked to tin mining in Indonesia, but many go unreported. That's because these miners are unlicensed, which means what they're doing here is illegal. Local police go after them, but miners say they are mostly looking for bribes. 90% of the country's tin mining territory is controlled by PT Timah, a state-owned company. The government also grants licenses to small independent crews who work on pontoons. Getting those permits, though, means having a modern vacuum system that attaches to the seabed on its own and doesn't require miners like Joko to dive to the bottom of the sea. But pontoons like that cost 6 times more than what Joko works on. Tin mining in Bangka began in the 17th century. Hundreds of years of digging has created moon-like craters on this once tropical landscape. The exposed rocks contain sulfides that react with air and water and leak acids into Bangka's waterways. Massive toxic lakes like these are everywhere. Now, 16,000 tons of tin are left on land, but PT Timah estimates that about 265,000 tons are still in the ocean. So miners have moved to the sea.
Itu kalau kita nambang, kalau ada ombak besar, dia jadi rata.
But offshore mining is killing fish in these waters. A local NGO found that mining at sea has damaged about 13,000 acres of reef around the island. Locals say that 8 years ago, they could fish within a 4-mile radius of the island. Now they have to travel at least 17 miles to catch enough fish to make a living. PT Timah did not respond to our requests for comment. The 4 men work on the pontoon for 11 hours, taking just a short break for lunch. At the end of the day, they divide the tin among themselves. Joko takes the most because his job is the riskiest. But he still makes only $13 a day. That's why he can't afford the protective gear most deep-sea divers use, like a pressurized helmet that costs around $2,000. He sells his tin on the black market to middlemen like Nasrin, who buys it for 10% below the standard rate.
Kebetulan kita nggak ada izin. Kalau ada penambang dari laut atau di sekitaran sini mau jual timah, kita beli dengan harga sesuai cek-cekannya gitu. Kebetulan di daerah wilayah tambang sini timah itu banyak tiling, Bu, dari tiling bekas kapal-kapal, jadi agak banyak buangannya.
So Nasrin has to refine the tin. A worker washes it again to get rid of any residual sand. Now, this is the tin Nasrin can actually sell. Workers then heat these metal platforms over an open fire. Then they pour the tin onto this blazing hot surface to evaporate any residual water. When workers inhale these fumes, particles of tin can enter their lungs and over time affect their breathing. Once the tin is dried, workers gather it up into sacks. And then it's sold to smelters who extract the metal from its ore. Tin is used in everything: phones, food cans, cosmetics, paints, and even fuel. But recently, Joko has been struggling to get a good price because government regulations have made it harder to find buyers for his product, which is considered illegal.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Today, Joko says he makes barely enough to feed his wife and 4 children.
Kalau sekarang harga timah, harga turun lagi anjlok gini, saya sih ya secukup-cukupnya, sepandai-pandainya kita untuk menyimpan uang. Sampai kita cicil, kita makan seadanya, makan sayur, atau makan ikan saja, atau kita makan Indomie. Wah, sepandai-pandai kita lah. Kalau saya nggak bekerja, penghasilan sih kalau untuk istri saya nggak ada. Itu satu-satu istri saya, harapan saya. Kalau saya nggak kerja, itu pun nggak makan.
But he says they're enough to make him conquer any fear. And his reason to get up the next day to do it all again.
Rasanya sih panik, nggak enak. Kok bisa begitu, macam mana pesan? Tapi apa membuat kita ada tanggung jawab untuk anak istri kita kerja aja profesi kita sebagai penambang timah. Pokoknya sampai timah ini habis. Kalau ada menambang, kalau timah masih ada, kita masih bertambang terus.